All right.
You were very dramatic about that.
I when I hit record, I like to hit record.
Hell yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hello. You see, we don't have to do a clap sync this time. Not doing video always, it simplifies so many things.
Right? It's great. For everybody who did not catch the actual streamed podcast, you have no idea what we're talking about.
Yes, and for some reason, our first episode talks about how it has video when it doesn't. Who would have thought?
Yes. Hello. Welcome back to the Tilted Roll podcast.
Yes.
Go for it.
This is a clean intro. So yes, for the last, in terms of kind of what to expect again, the last episode we talked a lot about getting started, kind of what to expect in terms of things that you can do maybe to get into the game more, like Adventures League,
Right.
the kind of supplies you can get.
But who are you?
Oh yeah, so both of us are or as I've colloquially called, are your podcast masters. So I am Marshall,
Yeah.
DM of our show Shadows of an Empire.
And I didn't know if you were going to introduce me
I
too.
should have gestured.
They wouldn't know the gesture was there because there's no video.
I know, but it would have helped you.
Exactly. And I'm Francisco, player in Shadows of Empire, and potentially something else in the near future. We'll see.
We have future projects in mind.
Yes. And we welcome you back to
yeah.
this menagerie of ideas and debates.
I wouldn't say as much debate though as it could be. Maybe it depends on. We'll see if we get to a topic that gets there.
Oh man!
But I think today we'll be pretty on the nose with each other, as our overall theme for today, or of episode 2 of the Tilted Roll podcast, is storytelling. We're going to be looking at both the perspective of the player and the DM. But we'll start first, kind of looking at the character story. So one of the big things that obviously a lot of people look at when they think of a character story is the backstory. I know, crazy, right?
Ooh.
Who would have thought? But there can be more attributed to this than just the simple, just like, oh, well, he was a soldier once and he fought in a war. Like, well, everything that you put into a backstory means something. That's always one of the big things I kind of look at a lot when I see character or people who want to play these characters that are like, oh, he was a former soldier and he fought in this war. It's like, well, then why is he a level 1 adventurer? It doesn't, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I have been on many tales. I am level 1. Killing a single goblin will net you 2nd level.
Well, to be fair, I've been through many wars. I was the quartermaster for all of them.
Right. In that scenario, it'd be fine. But obviously, there are people who make like their backstories like they've made these fantastical adventures and whatnot. When obviously, then that would mean they probably are more than just a level 1 character.
True. But essentially, what we're trying to get at is that essentially just fleshing out the backstory in a way to make role-playing this character a lot more fun and making it a little bit more memorable for the whatever game you have he or she is going to be in, or they, or whatever.
Everything. But but it's like, it's knowing, it's also not getting too carried away. Like, I think you see a lot of people when they start, they get carried away, and that's fine. You can let them you let it go. But it is something to keep in mind. Like, it actually can be in some ways more interesting if you allow, like, especially if you're playing a first level character, that this is your adventure. Like, this is your beginning. And so maybe making their backstory a little more milquetoast might actually be more beneficial for you, because maybe suddenly going to fight, monsters and, deal damage and fight and, draw blood from something else is shocking to your character. And maybe you can you can play with that. You can, again, tell the story then as you play the game, rather than just having this, amazing story. Like, oh, I fought in these wars, and now I'm going to fight a slug or a rat in someone's basement, as many level 1 quests are actually lined up to be.
As they should be, because, man, you don't want them dying at level 1.
Yeah. You all fight a giant black dragon. Oh, no, wait, that's you, Frank.
Yeah, that was me.
But that was due to a fail chart.
which are
So,
always fun.
Yes, but I can't fully blame you for it either.
Funny enough, this podcast is brought to you by Fail Charts. Roll natural 1, you're screwed.
Well, actually, so for anybody that doesn't know, the big reason why we are noted as Natural One is our big shtick. Whenever we do through any of our upcoming and one show that is running currently, is whenever a player rolls a Natural One, we are going to have some type of fun fail chart in line for them. I've currently been using the one from I think they're called Dungini. Maybe I would have to double check
that's like the best
person
name.
who made it. But we are still working on making our own. I have actually shown you it, Franny, yet, which I do need you because you need to help me finish it. But it's coming there. It will be ready relatively soon. I shouldn't say very soon, but relatively soon.
Yeah, but going back on topic.
Yes, sorry.
Creating a character backstory. Essentially, what makes your character who your character? What has the events that have led your character to be who they are now? If you're just getting into the game, a really easy way to make this at a more randomized sort of way, Xanathar's guide, or
the guide to everything.
The guide to everything. I'm getting confused with another book.
It's all right.
Xanathar's Guide to Everything has this fantastic section in the book called "This Is Your Life," which we both use.
Yes, I need to use it today, in fact.
Yes. And it's so much fun just rolling random characters or random character backstories on there. In case you don't have that and you just have, your typical player's handbook or just character sheet and you want to make a character that defines you, one of the big things is just know where you're playing in the world.
Right. I mean, and what is actually beneficial about this is that I almost can ingrain you into the world even more.
It's all just to make you feel like you're actually in the world. The whole point of D&D is to immerse yourself in this fantastical world, to escape reality in a way.
Right. And this is kind of a big thing though, is in a way it can almost bring I guess you could say the better part of the reality into the game. So things like a big thing that This Is Your Life can kind of pin to you is it can, you can roll on certain life events on it. And one of those things might be you fell in love, you got married, you had a child, so and that's kind of, I think I talked about this in our little beta podcast, and our topic here is somewhat similar to that, but now you get a little more detail in this episode. But one of the things I talked about is how maybe you're playing a character that, their whole life, they were a farmer, they were a family man, but, maybe you're a longer living race, or maybe you're a little older and you wanted to start going adventuring. So suddenly now it's oh, well, now my kids they're owning the land, they're doing whatever, but I've always wanted to be an adventurer. I've wanted to travel.
I would love to see that. The Silver Age man going out there. Just picking up swords oh, you whippersnappers.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's, because it's maybe this is kind of their bucket list thing. They want to go be an adventurer. They want to do stuff. Maybe,
this may be the last thing they do.
Yeah, exactly. And, they're willing to take the risk maybe of their life in some scenarios. Maybe, if you get to 5th level, you're okay, well, he probably isn't going to go past this point. He doesn't want to be in anything too overly life threatening, because he does have a family and he wants, so it depends, but you can play it however you wish because it's your character. But now, say you have this old man or old woman character is oh, I want to go out there and I want to be an adventurer. If my kids are all grown up and they moved out, I want to use my golden years for something fun and useful. And all of a sudden you find a big bad guy or a big bad woman, and you want to all of a sudden they're threatening to destroy the world. Well, maybe you're more motivated now to go fight them, because your family and your kids and your livelihood is on the line here, and you have the tools. Maybe in the scenario you have the tools to stop it,
right?
And so that's a huge motivator for anybody who's playing a character.
Which is something that we also are going to dive into, just thinking about what your character would do in many situations. I was telling Marshall this a couple of days ago. I was watching this one podcast run by the ever illustrious Christopher Perkins, who is the lead designer for actually Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the inside cover of any of your D&D books, you're gonna see his name. And
he's a legend in the D&D realm.
Yeah, essentially for being brutal with his games. They're all great. But I was watching one of the shows he does, and I was rewatching the first few episodes, and towards the end, he said something that really struck to me that seems obvious, but I feel like hasn't said enough in games. Just towards the end of the game, he thanked the people for stopping by and for being in the game, and then he told them to think about what their characters would do for the situations to come. Now that they were more familiar with the setting he was pouring out and all that, I feel like the minute he said that, it's like I had this whole epiphany, like, oh my God, that's what we're supposed to be doing this entire time, and me and my few years of playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. I mean, it's very easy to get caught up in the numbers and the dice rolls and all the damage and stats that you pulled out as a character. But you kind of have to take a step back sometimes and realize, like, right, I'm playing somebody that has like a personality and has certain traits that define them. You know, they may be decently good at combat, but like, are they interesting?
Right.
You know, like that's something that can really kind of turn something off. And if you can figure out a way to figure out what it is that your character does, like really trying to think, what is their personality? And then when you play, like, put yourself in their shoes. You know, are you somebody that's playing a very, you know, scaredy cat kind of character? A very famous one is Holly Conrad's Strix from Dice Camera Action. And, you know, she is, well, maybe she will help her friends. She's also a big scaredy cat, you know, and she will obviously run away if she feels that she is in supreme danger, but maybe just at a certain distance. So, but she plays that very well, you know, and because she, you know, puts herself in the shoes of her character. She makes sure that, you know, she's acting in conjunction with the way that she designed her character, and that makes her infinitely more entertaining. And I think for Holly herself, you know, she has obviously fell in love with this character. If you ever follow her on social media, you know that she is in love with this character, and you know, you see that because of how well she plays into the role of her character.
And character motivations have a lot to do with that, what happens in the campaign as well. Like, for another example, recently Marshall and I, in one of the games we're in, we were given a choice to either stay with the party, who the majority of which were going to make new characters anyways, or to
about half, pretty much. It was like a fine line,
pretty much
down the middle.
Or to have our characters go off with the people who are leaving, and then for us to make new characters as well. And we both decided that per what our characters would do, for what they were known to do, they would have gone off. So now we have two characters we're waiting to play.
Yes, and that was what I was referring to, the character that I have to roll a backstory for on that life events chart, or the This Is Your Life. And because that was a big thing, was, you know, we were... for that group, whenever we're done with the session, we go to, you know, fast food restaurant, whatever, and, you know, we chill there until they kick us out, just because, you know, as gamers wouldn't want to do. But that was a big thing, was, you know, because for a period, both myself, Franny, and I think another person was gone for a session. So what they did to compensate was they kind of drummed up two characters, so that they essentially had a 4-person party with 2 players.
They reverse Jaegered it, essentially.
Yeah, and so now that we finished that dungeon, when we were all back together again, they were given the choice, like, hey, you know, I don't really want you guys, Dino was like, you know, I really don't want you to be playing 2 characters at once. It's going to get super confusing. Players are already getting confused. You know, it's going to only get worse. Like, you guys should just pick one of the 2. And one of the players was like, "Yeah, I really just want to play the new one. I kind of enjoy her a little more. It's because he likes to play kind of trolley-like characters, and she has that personality.
Yeah.
Whereas other characters are a little more like, I do everything right. Nothing can be done wrong. we must be lawful in every way. So he wanted to play a character that gave him a little more flexibility, and then the other one wasn't sure. So all of a sudden, like half of our party was going to be switching characters, but that character that was the stick in the mud, the one that was going to be leaving, was my character's twin brother. And so I was like, well, I don't feel like my character would want to be away from him. They're very close. They were away from each other during like a war for a while. So like she had finally like got him back. They're business partners inherently too. So because they were both guild artisans.
Right.
So all of a sudden it's like, they have to sell things together. She is the seller and he is the creator. So it's like, they had that relationship. I can't just tear that up, and it would feel weird too. I wouldn't want to stick with with this new group for no reason. And so that was kind of the big thing. It's like, it depended on who was staying. Well, then the other half of the party kind of started to think like, well, maybe I kind of want to switch too. And all of a sudden that it was like, okay, well, now my decision is a lot clearer. If I'm the only one left out of maybe your character, Franny, then it would have been like, this is a little awkward.
Essentially, and my character has things tie him back to the place that they previously hailed from.
Yes.
So his motivation would have been to go back home. Essentially, he's only a 15-year-old child.
Yeah,
like he doesn't know any better.
Granted, he's slightly more adult-like in terms of that world, but
that's true. And plus, your character essentially adopted him.
Yeah.
So he was gonna follow your character no matter what. But there was
maternal instincts,
right? But in the beginning, I wasn't gonna do it because I was like, I know this character. I'm not gonna just gonna like not play him anymore and make a new character. It seems like a lot of work. Then I thought about it. I was like, this will make the most sense.
Yeah, for them as a character.
Yeah, and I convinced myself that this is the best thing for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was struggling a bit for a while. Like I was sitting there for like 15 minutes, just like debating every man, should I? I don't know. But if I did this, like this, that, like it was just like milling it over like constantly. And I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, it was that same thing where I was just like, she would not want to leave her brother, and she doesn't want to stay with the only member of that party that is staying that didn't change. There was one, not the player, but there was one character that a player in our group was playing that mine did not like. They didn't get along as characters. Me and the player get along just fine. This is, again, the benefit of having that player versus character separation.
Exactly.
But yeah, they didn't get along. So she definitely wasn't going to abandon her twin brother to stay with the person that she hates. So she went home, or she went with her twin to find a way home and whatnot. And they're going to ride off in the sunset and whatever. And we're going to start with this new group. And that was kind of, in the end, yeah, like that was us making a decision on characters. Not even though like we liked those characters and we really liked playing them. When we were kind of confronted with a situation that had to make us choose whether or not it would be right to abandon them, we realized that they would make the choice to leave. And so as players, we just have to adapt and move on.
Exactly.
They're not dead at least. So,
yeah.
It's not like we can never go back. We've never see them again. It's just more for right now, we're not playing them.
Exactly. And now we have backup characters just in case.
Exactly.
Like
pre-written.
Exactly. Like all motivation's done and everything.
Yes, exactly.
Like, and to go off of that, this character actually that was playing, here's a good note about motivation, how out of the world they can be. Mm-hmm. You already know this. So this character, his name is Rare. He's a 15-year-old child. His mother died when he was younger, around 9. So from 9 to 15, he's been homeless. And during this time, he's been living in a park where there's this one statue of a lady to which he's taken to talking to. And it got to the point where he wanted to have the statue talk back to him in his simplistic mind that he sold his soul to Campion just so he can get the power of doing so.
Yeah, good old warlocks.
So this kid was amazing. Like he just had this. Okay, this is going to a little bit into our next topic, but he had this flaw where he always felt safe in small enclosed areas, which is why I took Mold Earth as a cantrip, and why he was essentially Mole from the Atlantis movies.
Right, that's what I figured. What kind of was the motivation? I felt like it was like, oh, this is my safe space, must stay in here.
Exactly. He would always dig up the 5-foot hole and just jump in and just sleep in there, or use that for 3/4 cover.
Right.
And it was great. I loved him. Like, he would use that. That was his gimmick, and he is a lot of fun, which is why I was adamant to not play him. But there's another example as to what character motivations can lead you to feel about a certain character, and what puts you, what separates you from, in the example of you being a soldier in the army, you either being one of those helmet wearing soldiers that nobody talks about, or being the one guy without the helmet that is obviously the protagonist in this story.
Right. Yeah, no, being the
spiky multicolored hair.
Right, yeah.
Protagonist.
Unless it's My Hero Academia, and then in which case everybody looks like they could be the protagonist. Nobody knows.
Shout out to My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
On that note, this podcast is sponsored by...
No, it is sponsored by no one. Do not trust this man's word. But no, I mean, like, that is a big thing where it is just like, and I was going to be leading that. It's like I was kind of going to use this topic to segue is what character flaws can do for you as well in terms of backstory is a lot. A big thing that you'll really see is, you'll see people, again, where we were talking about earlier, where, you get lost in the stats. You see how well you do in combat, in everything. And you just kind of look at it as like a video game where it's like a big numbers game. You're just trying to max your stats, min-max everything. I don't need charisma. Who cares about that? All I need is strength as a fighter. I just need my strength and my constitution. I have health, and I can just wear armor. I don't need dex. Like whatever, right? Like you just take whatever you need instead of maybe thinking about like what each of the abilities mean. Like in terms of, say if you were a fighter, but then you wanted to be the leader of your group. Well, if your charisma is an 8, not a lot of people are probably going to listen to you because you're a blunt, dill hole who just is not, not good to listen to, not inspiring.
Who is hilariously still the leader.
Right. But it's not in the way that, maybe it's not in the way that you want it,
right.
Like, cause maybe as the leader, you want to talk to, the mayor of a place, but you're super blunt and you make no sense when you talk. So all of a sudden it's just like, okay, well, I'm not going to help you guys. You can go. You can leave my office now. Thanks. Like, I'm the mayor. If you try to attack me, you will get arrested. No, even if you have a 20 strength, you're a 20 strength fighter, enough guards show up, you will still get murked.
Yeah,
instantly.
Your swole muscles won't help you from the cascade of swords that will pierce your heavens.
Yeah, or arrows, or
that too.
Maybe magic, depending on the type of guards and soldiers they are.
I have thoughts about arrows, but let's get into a very, very separate topic.
Well, yes.
But flaws.
Yes, flaws.
Man, flaws. I love them, man. Flaws are just amazing. Because in my head, there's two types of flaws. You have your staff flaws and then your personality flaws. The personality flaws are the more obvious ones that come with the background that you might pick, or the ones you pick out yourself.
Right, yeah.
Like if you're...
Like I have a tick,
Exactly. And going off that, like the quirks you might get if you use Xanathar's, the little things right there. Like some things like if you're an entertainer, you might be a sucker for a pretty face. So every time someone with a pretty face comes up, you're like, oh, I'm going to do... what you're telling me, pretty lady or man.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like, I will do whatever you want me to do.
Exactly.
Pretty looking human or non-human being.
And then people are like, why are you doing that? It's like, it's my character flaw. in a completely meta so way. But
Well, as a player, you can say these things.
exactly. Like my first AL character, who I've already talked about in droves, Oscar.
Yes.
His flaw is that he had a strong taste for devices. So like hard drink. He was a druid.
Very opposite of you.
Exactly. He was a druid and he would get drunk. And it was his defining thing. It baffled everybody at the table.
It is an uncommon thing for druids.
It was so much fun to do. And then stat-wise, say you have a 6 in intelligence. Like one example is Critical Role. Grog, who is the character played by Travis Willingham, has a 6 intelligence. He role plays that to the T.
Yeah.
He's like,
funny.
I can't read, but I'm gonna smash things and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, no. One character I've talked about this a little bit in the beta episode, so I can talk about a little more here now, which is nice. Is a character I played named Sephron. He was an Eladrin wizard. But he used to be just like a normal wizard. He like got this family, like he started a family when he was kind of still studying and whatnot.
I love this
and
character.
then
sorry.
yeah, and then he though was always obsessed with, because like he was him because he lived in a lot of humanoid. He grew up with tiefling parents, and he had always lived by like humans and like generally low age expectancy types of creatures. So he was struggling a lot in terms of internally about like how he has lived through so many people. Like a lot of people have died in his life. So the friends that he had when he grew up, they're all dead.
Right.
Except for his sister, who mysteriously has lived as a tiefling for many centuries now. But that was a whole thing. So his goal, kind of part of his goal became, especially after he had a daughter, was to try to find a way to get rid of death, like to surpass it, to find a way to create immortality. And he became so obsessed with that. Obviously, this led him to necromancy. So he was a necromancy wizard. And we started these characters at level 3. So he was only 2 levels into necromancy at this point. And he was super fun to roleplay because he was insane. Like his wife took his daughter and left him because she was like a sailor. So she had quit that to settle down with the family and whatnot, because he had to stay in place for studies, and obviously it's easier to have a family when you're in one place, kind of whole thing. But then she left. Like she took the kid and left. So he was now what is now a meme, which is she took the kids. I'm glad it's a meme now. But it's a little too late for me though. But yeah, so she that was the whole backstory. So he joined the Adventures League essentially because she forced him to do it, because he's like, you're insane. I'm gonna try to use this as rehab. You're gonna go to the Adventures League and fight and try to maybe become less insane. It didn't inherently work, kind of. He developed as he went, but which we'll also talk about, but very soon. But yeah, so every time you would meet someone, he would always give them some type of fact about death. And I had this website bookmarked, but it was like 50 facts about death, and I just kept it there. And they were weird things. There were some weird facts. Sadly, some of them were historically based, so I couldn't read those ones because ones about the Holocaust don't really work when you're in a fantasy setting. Also, maybe it's not the most appropriate.
Probably not.
Both things are attributive. But that was the thing. It's if there was a topical death fact, I would always when he would meet people, he would do that, and he was he just was nuts, but he was really fun because of that. It was. What became less fun was when it became really sad that with how he interacted with his daughter and his ex-wife. That became really sad, and that started to ruin it. What also did help is that he was really weak, in everything. His highest stat was a 14, and that was his intelligence. And he was very not useful in every way. It's one thing to have certain stats as like that are flawed, maybe not perfect,
Right.
but all of his stats were bad.
Yeah,
That is never fun.
You were really unlucky with those rolls.
Oh, it was
man.
so bad. I should have just, if I knew that we could take point by, I would have done that, because at least I would have had like a 16 in my intelligence, and that at least is better. But no, at least the thing still is that like, yeah, he, so I tried to compensate because he got Gauntlets of Ogre Strength and the Headband of Intelligence. So I was like, maybe I'll just take a couple classes in Fighter. That'll give him some extra health from the class. But yeah, he couldn't, it was hard to fix him. But but playing him initially was very fun because he was just insane. You know, he was the back end of every joke. But what was really funny is all of our characters in that campaign were relatively insane.
Oh, yeah.
In one way or another. So it was really funny because he never would fight because he like thinks of himself as this high intelligence and above everyone else in the party, even though he spouts facts about death and undeath to random people on the street. So like whenever, like one time when they started like a bar fight, he's just sitting there drinking tea, and like the table has gone from in front of him. There's just destroyed debris around him. He's just sitting there drinking tea.
Right.
That's what was so fun about him, is he was just in two ends of a spectrum of insanity. And I'm happy because the character I'm planning on playing has a similar vein. Just not to the sad end. I think I've perfected the ability to be somewhat weird and insane, but still be somewhat likable, and that's my goal.
Hey man, like the sad thing is what gets me going. Just because I've from the experiences I've had playing in the different games I've done. Yeah, sad stuff just makes the world go around for me.
It depends though, because again, even as a player, it became very disheartening to play him.
True.
Because it just got to the point where everyone hates him. Like just in terms of other people, the party didn't hate him, but they definitely weren't like, "Here, I'll come for you, buddy." It's just like his wife would like tear into him with insults, and like the rest of the party would just be like, "Ha!" Like that's not.
And to be fair,
it's depressing as a player. As a player, it was depressing.
To be fair, and I wasn't there for most of those times, so my character would have been right there for you, because your character saved his life. Remember?
Right. Yeah. But once I lost you, I lost my only ally.
Yeah, that's fair. But we have so many characters that we just talked about, man.
Well, and that's the benefit of us kind of having the experience, and this may lead into a solid. Or because I think you wanted to bring up something about. Did you want to bring up something else about character flaws? You were mentioning you wanted to go on some tangent about it when we were going over the topics here. So I want to make sure you get everything out about the flaws that you wanted to.
Well, going off of what Ray said, this, if I remember correctly, the statistic flaws.
Yeah.
It's something that people are always like
very apprehensive about.
Yes, there we go. That's the word. They're like, I don't want a negative in this. It'll make me less useful, but it will make you more funny. I always try to have at least one negative stat, just so I can say, it's like I roll an 18 -2. That's always something fun to hear. On the table, just and then it's great because
that actually happened. It was a monster, but it happened yesterday on our show. We're recording this the day after Shadows of an Empire, but the monster they were fighting had a -2 to their dexterity because it was just a big purple metal worm, and because of that, it rolled a 2. So its dex save was a 0, which is always really even as a player though. It can be funny to have those things happen.
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
It makes for those memorable moments is what I mean to say. Because then you can say, he tried to open the door, the simple act of opening a door. However, he has like a 7 in strength and couldn't push open the door.
Yeah, he's weaker than an average. Because like the average like person stat is like 10.
10. Yes.
So if you're 7, you're 3 below that.
Yeah, you're one scrawny little man, which makes it more better when you beat someone who has a better stat in that.
Right. If you get lucky, because if it's just something that's like, all right, it is just a strength roll, and like they roll like a 2, so maybe they have like a 20.
Right.
So it's like their total was 7, but you rolled an 18. So sure, you had to subtract 2, but you're still better than 7.
Exactly. They pull a muscle while you're just like, oh, and you get the strength of the gods for like 3 seconds as you pull this card
one
up.
small moment of brilliance.
And one thing you can hold over the other character for the rest of the campaign.
Forever. and speaking of the rest of the campaign, the final note we really wanted to go over about characters and is like really then taking, those flaws, the benefits that they have, and developing them. And this is what I was mentioning about Sephirin.
Yes.
Was he, as he went on, like I said, I gave him some levels in fighter. I gave him some levels, just because I wanted him to kind of, he himself was changing. He had a couple of people die in the party. He had, one of them got brought back. People kind of had come and gone. He'd see, like, he started to fall a lot himself in battle. And so my thought was like, well, kind of, would he be willing to maybe like, how would he feel about being what he's doing? And I think I started to develop the regret. Like, this is where like the rehab comes into
Right.
starts to kick into place. Oop, I kicked my mic. Sorry.
Good job.
Luckily, this is what editing is for.
This is how exciting he gets.
Yeah, like, so the thing was like, so he now was starting to develop more. He didn't do the death facts anymore, which is funny. My reasoning for this, which I think only came into fold maybe like a couple weeks or like a week before I retired him as a character.
Right.
Was he believed, because there was some item there was some holy item they interacted with, and his belief was that he was talking to some angelic being. It was just his conscious, like it was just his, like, what I mean by conscious, like
right, his moral voice.
For some reason I was thinking like consciousness, and I was like, that's not right.
No.
But I was like, yeah, his conscious finally came back and started talking to him, and he was listening to it for once again, and maybe like in like 30 years.
Right.
And so it was funny because, like I said, he was an elf, so 30 years is nothing. But yeah, he hadn't listened to his conscious in a long time, and finally he was listening to it, and it was like, so like every now and then he would have spurts where he just talked to no one, but a lot of times people would notice, and then finally when someone was like, what are you talking to? And I'm like, angel. It's in my head. And people were like, all right, I regret I asked. But that was, what's funny is they were like, well, he hasn't made a death fact, and he generally has been a lot more pleasant. We'll let this go. We'll let this other crazy thing go. We'll keep the normal thing. But that was the thing. It was kind of like, it was ways for me to develop the character, but it still made sense for the character. He was still nuts, but it was in a different way. And it made him a better person. And it was just, it was interesting ways for me to play with that character. And that was what was so nice about it, was that like I was able to take him from this just death-mongering psychopath to believes he has an angel in his brain psychopath, but is inherently a better person. And that was what was so fun about him. And the only reason I retired him was just because, man, I didn't want him to die. That was actually my reasoning. I didn't want to play him anymore because I knew that if I did, he would die. And I didn't want him to die. And inevitably, he died anyway. Completely out in the onsets of his own classroom.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Oh, man. You never really told me if our DM for that game went into detail on how every single person vanished.
I don't know about your character, because his character, Adney, he had died. Essentially, our party got Thanos snapped. And
shout out to Thanos.
Yeah. And the character I was playing at the time fell. His character, while he was off in the military training, also got murked, right, and ashed, and so did Sephirin, sadly. And so what happened was, we did describe what happened to Sephirin, because we were joking. We're like, well, so it's like, so essentially he was in class, and he's like, because he became a teacher. So he was going to try to use the knowledge he had of magic and fighting to be able to maybe help other people, because it was better than getting his butt kicked by bats in a cave. But so he was just like, so he just walks into the classroom like, all right, turn your books to page 45. just turns to ash. And then all the students are just like, does that mean we can go? You gotta wait 15 minutes and then it's legal to leave.
Exactly. As per all, any college students listening to this, this is what's up.
No, it's if the teacher doesn't show up within 5 minutes for college.
That's true.
People will leave if he doesn't show up after 30 seconds. Right. In college,
people will leave if you don't show up for 15 minutes and you're the student.
People just won't show up.
Exactly. That's college in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But yeah, just man.
Yeah, I had a big story about that.
Huh?
Yes, I had a big story about that. But if you wanted to bring up something about it,
and the other side of the spectrum, you have characters who are stubborn as hell to change. Like I don't want to name names, but we both know of one character who has consistently been the same through many sessions. I've
made this joke on stream about it, so I can call him out a little bit.
Okay.
Our boy Jet, who is played by our friend Jade in The Shadows of an Empire.
Right.
I have tried in tooth and nail to hand him these like little bits to try to like get him to kind of just become more, not fully change, his person, just maybe to be a little bit more of a team player. And man, it is like pulling teeth to get him to try to like bite on something. Right.
It's gotten to a point where, at least for me, it's almost endearing. Like
it is,
especially since my character has been gone for so long. Coming back and seeing him still be the same, like, oh, thank God, it's stability.
Some things don't change.
Right.
Like for example, we lost an entire character and replaced them with another one.
Exactly. Fun thing you explain to someone who just came back to, but it's hit or miss with that one.
And I guess they never miss, huh?
Yeah, no mean pun intended. So.
I know it's very hard now. It's hard to try to repress your desire to meme.
Right.
Whenever someone says hit or miss, it's like it's there, and it's just like I could go for it. It's your brain. Don't do it. 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 I guess they never miss, huh? Damn it.
All right. Instantly one down like.
Yeah, we already got a dislike now.
There we go. But yeah, that was just one quick thing of the alternative that sometimes might work out if your character never changes. Like in terms of like older characters, like they're stubborn. Like they won't change until the very end, and they're like, maybe I do like elves.
Maybe I'm a bit of a D-bag. I don't know.
Yeah. Like if that's like the end result, and they eventually be like, oh, I'm an asshole. Great. Fantastic.
Right. At least you got there somewhere. Yeah,
you got there.
You got there at some point.
However, so it's essentially whatever works with the story.
Right. I think as long as you're not like, if you can kind of create / follow a storyline one way or another, then I think at least you're doing enough. But you should always keep in mind just some type of development.
And speaking of which, just keeping in mind that development, let's head on over to the other side of the screen here.
Yeah, the Dungeon Master.
Yeah, something that we've both done.
Yes.
Quite on and off.
Yeah, because I have to somewhat move the bullet point, but it transitions better, which is then as a DM, it is almost on you to try to foster that development.
Oh, man.
Because you can only get, and that's, like I said, I've tried to help Jet get certain reasons to develop, and in a way I kind of did in the last episode, so you should tune into that to see. But I because there was, if you follow along, you'll see something finally kick in for Jet this coming episode, or there's one that just came out by the time that we recorded this one.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be the last episode from when this one releases. And he finally got to achieve something that has been nagging at him in perpetuity, like in his mind for a long time. But that's the thing. It's like, you as a DM, it is important to like give your players something to develop with. They're not just gonna always be able to just come up with whatever crap on their own.
Exactly. And I find that games in where you actively reference each character's backstory, at least in a little bit, in a little way here and there, are a lot more enjoyable than games where you have these characters like, all right, you guys have backstories, neat. This is what's happening though.
Yeah, it like that was a big thing about when I added Peyton's character Kristoff. You know, again, you should watch the show. But you know, obviously his whole character is a tie-in to Dylan or Dylan's character's backstory. Like I literally combed through his backstory and was like, all right, you were present for these events and you know these things about them, like to Peyton. And I was like, so you are fully aware of these things that happened. And like, that was a huge, and that was able, and in that I was able to give, Ulrich a whole like new waft of information that he didn't know, but it was all related to his backstory,
which has, I think, consequentially led to the big backstory reveal 2 episodes back.
Yes, that did lead to that,
which I love so much. Like, kudos to our boy Dylan for getting that all set up, and you obviously for helping him out with whatever you could. But in terms of everything else, the best way I could put it is there's a meme out there, ironically with Chris Perkins' face on it. And it's of course, because if I could go with one man, it would be Christopher Perkins. Shout out to Christopher Perkins. But the meme is essentially, it's a picture of him looking disgusted and saying, for ignoring your character's backstories to further the plot. And then the bottom is just him looking satisfied with the words saying, using your character's backstories to blackmail your characters into doing whatever what your story demands.
Yes, Chris is very good at doing that. Yes, and it's always good when someone uses Chris Perkins for a Drake meme.
Exactly. And man, dude, the one thing I'm looking forward to DMing now that I'm older, wiser, and a lot less stupid, is to be able to take everybody's backstories and be like, all right, this is where you come in. This is where you come in. Here's a reference right here. Just making you guys feel great about playing your characters and making them feel a part of the world.
Or in some scenarios, really sad about your characters.
That too.
It depends on the backstory you made, though. If you make a very sad backstory, then probably the references you get will be very sad.
Which is something I'm hoping to do with this upcoming project that we're going to be embarking on.
Yes, because as we've discussed, and I'll leave a teaser too, mine is not very happy.
No, it's going to make you feel things, and that's what I want.
That's what I hope to see. And that actually does kind of really, but then that really leads to a really solid point, which is like, as a DM, you know, you really have to ingrain them into the world. So it is taking those things like the backstories and not just using them for character development, but just to like bring them in the first place.
Right.
You know, it's like, don't just like have your characters make backstories and then just be like, all right, that's cool, so here we go.
Right.
You know, like really find a way to integrate them. Like, you know, if they have relationships, maybe include their characters. Like the campaign that we were referencing to with Sephrin. You know, one day we came home for an adventure, and all of a sudden, like, someone was like, oh, by the way, your wife is here. And all of a sudden he just is like full, like, he'd be joking, like, you know, because like obviously with the rest of the party, he's kind of like, he started to become more normal. You know, he's joking a bit. You know, he's kind of like whatever. He's not really caring. All of a sudden he hears his wife just like dead stare, stopped in his tracks, like just dead stare.
Automatic regression.
Yeah, and then like he just ran to like wherever he like was told, like he was like, where are they? And then like just ran into that direction, because you know his goal eventually kind of just became like to bring that in. But that was the nice part. It's like, you know, it's having a DM like be able to take your character and like really integrate something like parts of your backstory into what you're doing, whether it's right away or halfway through, later on,
and not overshadow the character. Like, as you mentioned before, not to have the story overshadow what your players are trying to do with their characters. Effectively railroading them hard.
Yeah.
Like, my character wouldn't do this. Fascinating. This is happening, though.
there are places for that.
Yes,
and, you
definitely.
know, they're like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you're in this pit. Well, why would I go into this pit? Because the giant evil wizard put you there. That's why you're in the pit. And hey, you had no choice in this matter. You're in the pit.
Right.
You know, but like maybe if that choice could be there, let them make that choice not to. 'Cause
Right.
maybe their character wouldn't do that.
And not doing that too much, because too much of that is like, it just takes away from the fun of it. Like saying there's only so many pits you could be thrown into without given a choice. If
There's only so many pits in the world.
exactly. If you consistently take away choice from your characters, what are they there for except to throw weapons around and fight? Which is why I'm enjoying what you're doing with the game now, by the way.
Oh, good. My concern was that a big concern I've always had is that I haven't given or been able to foster the ability to give you guys a lot of choices as we go along.
Which is fine. Shadows of Empire is a story.
I mean, it's a very linear and storied campaign,
Right.
Yeah, and you know, who knows how we'll do campaigns in the future. But that was the way I conceived that campaign and the way I used to DM a lot. But I have denoted, like, since I've grown, like, a lot more the need for, like, story, or not even story, just character choice. But I've also learned that there are campaigns where there's too much character choice. You have to find a balance between the two.
Yeah, to being a railroad or a sandbox.
Yeah, both are have inherent flaws and can go relatively poorly. Like if you give your characters too much choice and it's all just them doing whatever and them, you know, going along and just doing all the stuff, like the problem you run into is like, well, then what is their purpose? You know,
Exactly.
Where are they going to develop that? And that's where you lose the development part. Is now they're all of a sudden not. You don't have like a finite goal. You're just kind of going around doing whatever. Like players may sometimes like that. They may inherently like the idea of just being able to, you know, work for a guild, take whatever jobs they want, you know, do whatever, you know, this, that, and the other thing. But, you know, unless they're kind of given a reason to go fight some big bad guy, they're probably not going to do it. You know, if it's like, you know, what would you do? Like, you're all of a sudden told, like, okay, let's see. So you could either you could either run away or go to this other city entirely away from this big problem, or you can fight the gigantic monster crab man that is threatening to obliterate society. Like most of the time, you'd be like, yeah, peace.
Yeah,
just run out.
Like, see you later. It's like, unless
So-
they're inherently good in all ways and form.
Well, right, but I'm just saying, like, you know, like they need to have. Sometimes you may need to give them that motivation.
Exactly.
And sometimes having them be like warriors of destiny and whatever, like maybe they can have a lot of choices as they go along, but they still have that inherent need to like defend people as a whole or fight this one bad guy at least.
Exactly. Like one common thing to do, like in the example you presented, have one of the characters be friends with someone there. Have someone like be given a flower by a little flower girl to invoke that pathos, if you will, onto them. I think I'm using that word right.
I don't know. You named your character that, so
That's
I
true.
would think so.
You would think I would know. But just giving them reasons to defend this. Like one of the characters' family lives in this town, ironically right next to the seafront where the crab man is about to attack.
Yeah. I don't know. I went with a nefarious crab evil mastermind, but you know,
Exactly.
you never know what you'll see.
Right? It's like,
He is threatening us with a massive crab rave that will destroy society. No. But
on an unrelated note, stay tuned for information of our new adventure that we're writing. Crabman Attacketh.
sponsored by Monster Cat's Crab Rave. Doot, 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 doot.
Oh man.
But you know, like you really have to find the middle ground between those two things, because there is a lot of value in having character choice and their ability, because like there does tend to be a problem if you run a campaign and it's like all railroaded. You know, we had that problem in our last campaign. That's partly the reason why that last campaign we were doing that was Sephron was in and that new character I made was in, that kind of ended, was because it started to feel very railroaded. It started to feel very, you know, it started to feel like it had a decent lack of choice. You know, The other thing was like all the characters were different. No one really trusted you, knew each other. Making, if you can keep kind of them in a line, but like allowing them to explore in like a small cone of that area, then you have like some makings of things. Like you can have them do certain quests that are super linear, like that they're railroaded on. They have to do this. But then maybe after that, they're like, well, now you have to maybe look in these areas, now you can maybe explore a little more. Maybe you can go shopping for a while. You can do whatever, these things maybe that if like you can have time to go research something that your character maybe needed downtime to do. That's a big thing, is knowing how to utilize downtime in D&D. A lot of DMs do not use downtime.
No.
I really haven't either in our show, but it's because a lot of times because it's a show, I try to keep things going because, downtime takes time. But you can just time skip downtime. You can just have like a moment where you as players all sit there and like, all right, you guys are going to be pretty much doing nothing for a month. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Like what is everyone at the table going to be doing for this month?
And make that roll.
Yeah. And like you can work on those things together. And like, again, as a show, maybe it won't be as conducive if we tried doing that in like Shadows of an Empire, but not everybody who's trying to run a campaign is doing a stream show or a YouTube show or whatever, like you were probably just sitting there with your friends. So do downtime, like make downtime for your characters, man. Like that gives them so much development time.
The rules for it is in the DMG. There's a section there in Xanathars. Just like use that. Carouseling is always fun because it always creates more problems than it gives benefits. Like you go to carousel and have like a one night stand, and then 9 months later, all of a sudden you have a kid,
right? Though to be fair, it depends on what you're in terms of like the kind of time setting you're putting it in.
That's true.
If you're putting in a very, very low fantasy and almost medieval setting, then that's more likely than you think. Whereas maybe a high fantasy setting, maybe there's a little more contraceptives, but you can play with that.
Yes.
And again, that's the minute parts of having a character setting, because you never know when your players are going to be like, I just want to. You gotta be able to handle what your players throw at you, but and if you give them the environment, they'll surprise you. That's actually a big thing, is you really want your players to surprise you. Like if they're doing exactly kind of what you expect, you're kind of losing something somewhere. So I'm not going to say you're doing it wrong, but you're missing something. Something could be enhanced for the players, because if they're doing exactly what you think, that railroad is getting real tight then. Exactly.
I have this one last story I want to say from a campaign I ran a long time ago before I joined the military and whatnot. This is actually what the project we're working on is based off of. A campaign that you were part of, albeit momentarily, but you were a part of.
Right.
In it, there's the best moment that caught me completely off guard was the party had just finished raiding a town, trying to get to the center to liberate it from this one evil order of knights. And one of the players, played by Jade, our buddy Jade, had family there. Pretty much his father-in-law lived in there of his deceased wife. So they would go there, and to cut the story short, his father-in-law essentially sacrificed himself to allow them to escape the town because there's more people than they could handle. So they managed to escape the town. Then towards the end of the campaign, like right before we ended it for the night, I gave the party a little bit of time to decide what they were doing before the night's end. And Jade's character went off to where his wife was buried because they weren't too far away. Went off and then made a makeshift grave for his father-in-law. And he made sure he was alone and proceeded to mourn for his father-in-law. And all this, I wasn't expecting at all.
Right. He plays a very like he plays very off the cuff characters that are very either stubborn, like this character I found it was essentially Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Really.
Oh yeah. But so when that happened, I was like, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah, those are
these sad moments, and these moments of character development that just make the story all that richer, because everybody else saw him as a more sympathetic character from there on, because he was a bit of an ass prior.
Right. Well, and probably still acted as one, but
now more justified.
Yeah. Made sense. There was reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
But that, and with that story, with that amazingly sad story, but I think is very fitting, that will end us for the podcast today. So thank you all for anybody that joined us. Once again, if these episodes are available on, if you would like, are always going to be available right here on YouTube. Otherwise, it'll be, if you're listening to the audio version of this, here on Bandcamp.
Hey.
They both exist in both areas. I will be looking at maybe seeing if we could find a way to get these on Spotify at some point. Probably help us with the discoverability. But we'll work on that as we go. I don't know the minutia of doing that, but
maybe the Play Store.
Yeah, we sadly didn't upgrade from a library for this recording. But we don't have to worry about the whispering. So small baby steps.
Right. There's no more ASMR that we have to.
Yeah, we don't have to be like hello and welcome. We can be we were able to talk a little nicer, or louder, which is nice.
Right.
But we are looking forward to maybe being able to have a better recording space in the future, as well as we're always going to be experimenting with the better ways to distribute this on YouTube and make that look. Otherwise, for now, we hope you can let us know any thoughts you have about our podcast, what you'd like us to talk about in the future in the comments below, or you can always tweet at us at Natural1RPG on Twitter, or you can follow us on Instagram, the same at there. We're trying to be a little more frequent on that. It's essentially our nature photography page.
Right.
But we're getting into a number of amazing things in the future. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at least for those.
No, man, 2019 is going to be great.
Yes, we're going to.
Happy 2019, everybody.
Yes, this is our first podcast of the new year. This is going to be a better year for us. 2018 was where we kind of just got started. We were experimenting a little bit. Mm-hmm. We're going to be hitting the ground running a lot more in 2019. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Yeah, to see us crash into the multiple walls along the way.
Especially the fourth wall.
Especially. All right, guys. So thank you for stopping by. This has been my friend Marshall.
And this has been my friend Francisco. And we are your podcast masters, and we will see you in the next adventure. So long.
Take care. Goodbye. I'll see you all again.